It's not exactly what Barack Obama had in mind when he called for an Asia pivot. The red carpet rolled out for the Philippines' firebrand President Rodrigo Duterte, landing in Beijing for a 4-day state visit to China. He's not alone. A 400-strong business delegation with him. They want to woo investors, particularly for cash-hungry big infrastructure projects. That explains, in part, why the former mayor of Davao has refrained from crowing over a July arbitration ruling in favor of Philippines fishermen in disputed South China Sea waters. That's part of the explanation, but not all of it. Since he took office, Duterte has proved thin-skinned and trigger-happy when it comes to the former colonial power, the United States, dismissing Western criticism of the 3,500 summer executions carried out since April in the name of his war on drugs. Will he follow through on his threat to end joint naval maneuvers with the U.S.? Where would that leave Obama's Asia legacy? And what consequences for a region that's more than ever interdependent economically, but increasingly tense politically? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Duterte in China. We hope to be joined from Manila by Epimaco Densing, Assistant Secretary of the Philippines Department of the Interior, who joins us now. There he is. In Manila. They're here in Paris for a conference at the French Political Science Institute, IFRI. Let's welcome Reynaldo Cruz de Castro, who chairs the China Studies Department at Manila's De La Salle University.
Good evening.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us. Renway Hwang, Vice President of the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome to Paris as well.
Nice to meet you.
And from Washington, Jonah Blank, Senior Political Scientist at the RAND Corporation. Thank you for joining our discussion.
Thank you for having me.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. In China, Rodrigo Duterte will be sitting down, by the way, with the top leaders of the National People's Congress. He's going to visit the Great Wall. He's going to speak with investors. The highlight comes Thursday at the Great Hall of the People, that meeting with Xi Jinping. Before we go into geopolitics, let me begin by asking you, Reynaldo Cruz de Castro, what would you say is going to be the chemistry between this working-class 71-year-old former mayor of Davao City and the polished 63-year-old president, someone who's from the nomenclatura of China?
But you have to remember, Xi Jinping also started as a mayor in Fujian province, so they have something in common. They started as local government officials.
But they don't have the same personality, do they?
I don't think so, yeah. But they have, of course, a common interest.
So what will a fly on the wall see in terms of the chemistry between the two?
Well, probably to just focus on economic issues. That's an attempt, basically, of President Duterte to repair what he perceived as the damages brought about by, his predecessor challenging China in terms of getting closer to the United States and, of course, filing the claim against China in the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So it's an attempt, basically, to mend fences after you have nearly 5 years, starting, of course, with the Scarborough Shoal incident, 2012, then, of course, the filing of the case.
Because we've heard Duterte's statements. Is he someone who can charm?
He can be very charming. He's very charismatic. That's why he has broad domestic support.
Renway Hwang, what do the Chinese make of Duterte? He uses 4-letter words when he speaks. He shoots from the hip. What do they think of him?
I think he represented the populist mood in Philippines. And he himself was originally as a left leader. So he believes the welfare of the Philippine people is fundamental task for him. So that's why he tried to get better relationship with China and try to get more economic solid development.
But you don't have this kind of politician in China, do you?
Yeah, but our policy is always put development as first.
Okay, let's get into policy then. When he ran for president, the tough-talking Duterte vowed to personally jet ski to disputed islands to take on China. But as Josh Vardy reports, that was then, this is now.
A striking reversal of foreign policy. Before President Rodrigo Duterte's election in June, the Philippines was one of China's sharpest critics and a staunch defender of US interests in Southeast Asia. China and the Philippines now look increasingly prepared to become unlikely regional allies. Duterte spent months bad-mouthing US foreign policy and criticisms of his hardline domestic drug policy, while simultaneously welcoming renewed ties with China. Some have welcomed pushing the US out into the cold.
It's survival. It's necessary that if they leave, we will not just stay in the corner and cry. We need to find a way. If they're gone, then we'll try other countries. We'll strive to learn Russian culture or Chinese culture. Like what President Duterte said, if the Americans take us for a snack, they'll only give us a sandwich. But with the Chinese, you get an entire feast. That's how we think.
However, a Pew survey conducted last year suggested 92% of Filipinos have a favorable attitude towards the US, while 58% distrusted China. It could be a risky gamble to snip ties with the US, one which threatens to upend the delicate situation currently unfolding in the South China Sea. In the past few weeks, Duterte has scrapped joint military patrols with the US there, while also threatening to reject assistance from US special forces in counter-terrorist operations in the Philippines. This runs in total opposition to the policy of his predecessor, Benigno Aquino, who filed a complaint against Chinese expansionism at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. It was overwhelmingly upheld in July, a ruling rejected by China. While Aquino staunchly defended Philippine sovereignty of the Spratly Islands, Duterte has been less rigorous, despite saying he would discuss the Hague ruling with the Chinese.
We will stick to our claim. We do not bargain anything there. We continue to insist that it's ours and that the tribunal, international decision will be taken up.
Any such talk is likely to rattle the Chinese, and Duterte has never said when discussions would take place. He previously said he would not bring up the sensitive subject on this trip to avoid angering the Chinese leadership.
Epimaco Densing, the Reuters news agency is quoting a source in the Philippines delegation as saying there could be a deal to put on the back burner that ruling from July and instead offer conditional rights for Filipinos to fish. Do you see that happening during this trip?
No, I don't think so. The president was clear in his pronouncement that when he goes there, he will invoke that ruling, but he will not insist as a main issue of discussion, because the main issue of discussion there is to promote trade and cooperation and, of course, making sure that we continue to benefit from that area as far as the Filipinos are concerned.
So how far will this pivot towards China go?
Well, as I mentioned, it's a clear policy. The president is not in the authority, as he was saying, that he has no authority to give away that area. That's as far as we're concerned, there's already a ruling that's ours. That's the Philippines. And what we have to make sure is war should not be the main policy in making sure that we continue to enjoy benefits in that area. Again, we were talking more on the more general aspect of the trade and cooperation with China. We've been benefiting a lot. In fact, whatever we're benefiting there does not in any way connected to our claim, or not to our claim, to our pronouncement that the Scarborough Shoal is ours, or that West Philippine Sea is within Philippine jurisdiction.
All right, let me bring in Jonah Blank on this. Jonah, we heard in that report that local mayor saying the Americans, when they promise you something, it's small, but when the Chinese do, it's a veritable feast. What's your reaction to that statement? And you just heard, on the one hand, they want to do business with China, but the Scarborough Shoal is for the Philippines. You just heard.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Jonah Blank.
Sorry.
I think if that mayor is talking about purely entertainment value, he's right. U.S. diplomats do not provide an 8-course banquet to their visitors, so Duterte will eat very well in China. But when you get to the actual substance, Is China a more reliable security partner or economic partner than the U.S.? I think it will be a very different question. As a U.S. security partner, the Philippines has been a treaty ally since 1951. As an economic partner as well, the ties go very, very deep. And when you're talking about the U.S. as an economic partner, you're not just talking about the U.S. You're talking about U.S. partners such as Japan, South Korea, Singapore, a whole range of others. Let's remember the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, is headquartered in the Philippines, and its primary contributor is Japan. If the Philippines were to have a paradigm shift towards China and away from all of the Western powers, the economic consequences and security consequences would be severe.
The Philippines, where the headquarters of the ADB are, Reynaldo Cruz de Castro, the Philippines about to take on the rotating presidency of
ASEAN.
Of ASEAN, the group of Southeast Asian nations. I've been reading some saying, you toning it down with China could be the first step towards a broader multilateral agreement on who controls what in the South China Sea.
The position of President Duterte, and this came out during the Laos summit, is that the PCA ruling or award is something between China and the Philippines. So he basically removed it from the ASEAN agenda. So that's basically, an implication that's happening right now in terms of when we're talking about ASEAN. So probably once the Philippines becomes the chair of the ASEAN Standing Committee, the South China Sea issue might be put out of the table when it comes to discussing the South China Sea issue.
So for you, this is really contained to relations between Manila
and that's basically
and
the
Beijing.
position of President Duterte.
And so what do you make of the statements that he made before going and the statements that we're hearing?
No, it's separate. It's separate basically. It's pertaining to during the time of President Aquino, he raised this in several ASEAN summits, to the point that you even have the time that ASEAN did not come out with any joint communique in 2012, and that's because the Philippines was raising it. Cambodia was trying to block it. So I think President Duterte's position now is that he will not raise that contentious issue in ASEAN.
Renway Hwang, will Chinese authorities accept a deal where the Philippines keep their claim on those islands?
The disputes will still be there. I don't think disputes is disappeared, but we and the Philippines and China will talk peacefully on these disputes rather than go into conflict or sue to the international court. These are not our options now.
Will this be a hindrance to all those big infrastructure projects that the Philippines would like China to invest in?
Yeah, the infrastructure investment will be some kind of further economic linkages between two countries. And I think this is also the rebalance of Philippine foreign policy.
So that will go ahead?
Rebalance between Aquino, the former president, had made two further closer to the U.S. allies and made a very strong tension with China. So I think President Duterte is changing to some degree its foreign policy in Philippines.
All right. The president, ahead of the China trip, there we heard in that report, speaking to about this issue when the international arbitration in The Hague ruled back in July in favor of the Philippines. It was a case, as we were just hearing there, from Renway Hwang that was inherited from his predecessor, and there you can see where the areas are. And there's also Palawan, where the United States has a base. And ultimately, Jonah Blank, what's going to be the fate of that base?
Well, Palawan, to which the U.S. has access, is very important for the Philippines itself in terms of its insurgency problem in the southern part of the country. I've got a sentimental attachment to Palawan since that's where I learned how to and got my scuba certification. It's the serious point there is that without the U.S. Special Forces partnering, it's highly unlikely that the Philippines military would have been able to bring some measure of order there. If they think that China is going to be able to step into that role, I suspect they're going to be very, very disappointed.
But you just heard Renway Hwang say the dispute's going to continue. We'll still be able to do business. Do you agree?
I think to some degree that's true. I think China and I think President Xi will take Duterte to the cleaners. President Xi is a much better negotiator. And let's remember, President Duterte, with all due respect, is not a traditional politician. He makes his policy on the base of basically his gut instinct. He shoots from the hip. He's very unpredictable. He's very willing to change position on a dime. People in the Philippines refer to him as their nation's version of Donald Trump. And I think we can expect to see a level of unpredictability from him that may not sit quite as well with China in the long run.
Epimaco Densing, your reaction? Duterte no match for Xi Jinping when it comes to things like trade negotiations.
Well, not necessarily. The other speaker was right in saying that he's unpredictable, and I would think that even President Xi will not be able to predict what the President Duterte will say. They will not be able to predict what's in his mind. Even the cabinet officers or cabinet members of the president will not be able to predict what he will say. So nobody will and nobody can. But one thing's for sure, whatever the president will say, whatever the president will do, will always redound to the benefit of the Philippines and its people.
Do you agree with that, Reynaldo Cruz de Castro?
I don't think so. You know, he basically make positions without even consulting. Like, for example, when he announced in Hanoi that the joint military exercise will be stopped, not even the National Security Advisor was aware. Not even the Foreign Secretary was aware that the president made that decision. So there is some disconnect going on in the administration right now.
Will those joint patrols with the United States be stopped? We're going to ask the rest of our panel when we come back. You're watching the France 24 debate.